Hello, I'm Mandi Lockley and welcome to On Purpose Astrology. I hope you enjoyed the Pisces full moon that we had on the 30th and 31st of August. It was a super full moon, which means that it was more intense because the moon was closer to the Earth than it usually is. It's the third of four super full moons that we're having this year. Might be a time as the moon is fading from its fullness to reflect upon what emotions came up for you, what came to a head, particularly emotionally or maybe spiritually. It was on reflection, I think, a lesson in emotional maturity for many of us. And the reason I say that is because the full moon was conjunct, moon in Pisces was conjunct Saturn in Pisces. And Saturn, of course, brings us lessons. And particularly the moon Saturn cycle has something to say about emotional maturity. Maybe you had some strong dreams. Maybe you couldn't sleep, which is common for a full moon. It was an invitation, I think, to serve, an ongoing invitation, of course, to serve, but to serve and help others or the world in a compassionate way. Because the sun, of course, is in Virgo, and Virgo is about service, helpful, practical service, whereas Pisces is more about compassion and empathy. So it's finding a balance. Hopefully you were able to find a balance between helping and serving in a practical way, but also in a compassionate and empathetic way. Certainly it's about discipline again, because Virgo, the sun in Virgo, is about discipline and routine. And Saturn, of course, is all about discipline. For myself, I found it very deep to go into meditation during that full moon. I went to new places in my meditation and discovered a new method for my meditation. I'll share it with you because it's quite interesting, and I didn't actually start to connect it to Pisces until I've just started speaking about it now. But in my meditations, taking big, deep breaths, and as I took a big, deep breath in, I had the sense of the energy building. And then there was a pause. I just had I just felt called to pause for a few seconds before breathing out as the energy built. And as I exhaled slowly, it felt like a release of energy, and then the stillness at the bottom of the breath for a few minutes before I started on the next breath. And why that's associated, I think, with Pisces was because it felt like the building up of a wave, an ocean wave, that feeling of intensity as it peaks, and then that feeling of relief and flow as the wave breaks. And you just, like a surfer, you just surf the wave. And when you get to the bottom of the wave, when you get to the shore, then there's that stillness, that moment of calm and not moving before you start again. So that was one of the insights that I had during that Pisces full moon. Now, before I start talking about Venus and Jupiter, who were doing some very interesting things early this month, I just want to make another plug for let me share my screen, for the Academy of Astrology online conference from the 1st to the 3rd of December 2023. If you watch my full moon video to the end, you'll see I announced that it's a £50 early bird fee until the 31st of August. Well, I'm very pleased to let you know that that's been extended to the 3rd of September, Sunday, the 3rd of September. So you can get that conference for only £50, which is an absolute bargain. You can see the details here and the website link, but I'll put it all in the comments. But you've got 17 international astrologers, all different topics, plus a free conference workshop to enjoy as well. So I hope you're interested in that. If you are, as I said, go and have a look. If you want to book before the 4th of September, because the early bird finishes on the 3rd of September. Right, so let's have a look at the chart for Jupiter and Venus. So what are Jupiter and Venus doing? Well, this week, both planets, both Venus and Jupiter, are stationing. What does that mean? Well, you can see on the chart here, Venus and Jupiter are circled. You can see a little S underneath them. That means they're stationing. Now, there are two types of station. It's to do with retrograde. As we know, the planets occasionally go retrograde. The sun and moon don't because they're not planets, but the planets go retrograde periodically, which means from our perspective, not literally, but from our perspective here on Earth, they are moving backwards. Before they start to move backwards, they stand still. They stand still, which is the first clue to what a station means. It's about standing still. I talked about that stillness when I talked about the breath, didn't I, just now? That stillness, that moment of stillness. When, after they've stationed retrograde, that stillness for a day or two, depending a little bit longer, depending on how slow the planet actually is, then they start to move backwards. And when they finish moving backwards, when they've gone backwards as far through the zodiac as they're going to go, they have another station, which is a station direct. Again, it's standing still. Before then, we get the forward movements of the planets again. So we have pretty much along the same period. So Venus stations direct on the 3rd and 4th of September. And then Jupiter stations retrograde on the 4th and 5th of September. I've shown the chart here for the 4th, which shows both of them in station. So as I said, stationing direct, it's about standing still, literally. Things seem to stand still for a little while. And with Jupiter there as well, also standing still, there's a kind of perhaps the energy of a hiatus. Things aren't moving or they're moving slowly. Perhaps we need to be patient. We've got Uranus in the mix as well. Uranus isn't patience, but patience. But perhaps we need to sort of wait and see, particularly during those couple of days. But the good news is that Venus is about to go direct. So while it's in station, it's kind of busy, kind of moving up a gear, ready for that direct. It's not quite ready to move forward, but it's kind of cranking those gears up a little bit. So we can kind of reflect on the period that Venus has gone retrograde, when it was retrograde. We can reflect on that period. Off the top of the head, I can't remember the exact dates when it went retrograde. I'll pop that in the description below. But for that period, we can reflect on what we've learned about relationships, how relationships have changed, what conflicts have come up in relationships, how we have maybe manifested in some way drama in our relationships, also creativity. Venus in Leo is very creative. It's a very creative sign. Then, of course, Jupiter is stationing as well, retrograde. It's moving down a gear. Instead of moving up a gear and getting ready to go, it's moving down a gear and getting ready to slow down. And with all retrogrades, anything associated with that planet, it's things moving more slowly. All the things to do with that particular planet in that particular sign, with the particular aspects it's making, is a chance to review, renew, reflect. So that period, as I said, between the 3rd and the 5th of September is when we're going to be feeling those stations. The energies of the station are, of course, available to everyone, and we'll see perhaps some of them reflected in the world, out in the world, in the news. Those of you that follow the news, you might see some news that reflected to things kind of standing still, to do with the themes of Venus and Jupiter. I will talk about what those themes are very shortly, but just to give you a little heads up in how intense this might affect you. As I said, the energies are out there. But if you have anything between 10 and 17 degrees of the fixed signs, any planets or angles, the ascendant, the midheaven, for example, between 10 and 17 degrees of the fixed signs, then you will feel this more intensely, because you will be having what's known, of course, as a transit. These station transits exactly on your stuff, stationing planets are exactly on your stuff in your chart, then it can be quite intense. And the fixed signs are, of course, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. So during this station, Venus and Jupiter are in a square aspect. So let's look now at the themes of this Venus and Jupiter. They're in a square aspect. They are in a square aspect in earth signs, earth sign for Jupiter and fire sign for Venus, of course. It's a focus on your social life. These are the things to focus on. That's another theme for stations. It's what you need to, or what you want to, or what you can commit to focusing on. It's a strong focus, a spotlight on things, a spotlight on your social life. Perhaps you need to reassess at this time and reflect on your resources and your energy, whether that's material and financial resources or whether that's energy. What are your energy resources at this time? For those of you, those of us, and I include myself in this, who are inclined towards people pleasing, perhaps you need to reflect on that during this time. How do you give away your energy, your money, your time, your resources even to others without expressing your needs? Overindulgence. Have you overindulged? Jupiter, of course, is the planet of overindulgence, and in Taurus, Jupiter likes the comfort, the luxuries, likes to spend money, or perhaps often sometimes with Taurus, the opposite. Taurus can sometimes be a little bit stingy with their money. So perhaps you will look at your savings. Perhaps you want to make your savings work better for you. Maybe you have overspent, overindulged. You need to go on a bit of a diet because Taurus, of course, is about sort of overindulgence. It's about food and what you put into your body. Perhaps because you have been eating unhealthily. I'm not saying that anyone needs to lose weight because that's up to an individual, and everyone's beautiful, of course. Jupiter in Taurus celebrates that everyone is beautiful, whatever their size and shape. But if there's been a bit of unhealthy eating, maybe this is a good time to sort of reflect on that and maybe put a better nutritional plan in place, maybe even some exercise. We've got here a trine from Jupiter to that Mercury still retrograde, which is again about reviewing sort of your routines and your habits because it's retrograde in Virgo, conjunct the sun there, of course, Mercury. So again, that's about sort of diet, habit, hygiene, routine. So that's a few things to reflect on. Income and expenditure. We talked about overindulgence, which is a theme for Jupiter. Income is something related to Venus. We talk about Venus in terms of relationships and in pleasure and in fun and playfulness, and that is certainly a thing with Venus in Leo. But also, where is your income coming from? Do you have enough income? Do you need to maybe ask for a pay rise, or maybe ask to put during this time? It's a difficult time for a lot of people in terms of the cost of living is currently very high. So think about your income. Your income is related to your value, how you self-value yourself. So if you are perhaps feeling as if you are underpaid, perhaps it's time to consider whether that is a reflection on perhaps low self-esteem. Very much a theme for Venus and also for Taurus, self-esteem. Creativity, of course. Both Leo and Taurus in their own ways are very creative signs. So think about what you are doing creatively, for example. Values and ethics and integrity. That's another thing to sort of contemplate during this time, during this period. Not just the period of these stations, but perhaps for the period of the next few months. These themes set us up for the next few months. Self-improvement, that's a great one for Jupiter. Self-improvement. Wisdom, what have you learned? Again, we've got that trine to Mercury. Mercury is about communication and information and learning and mindset. How can you turn that information and what you've learned and that mindset, how can you turn it into wisdom? If Mercury is what we know, Jupiter is how we use what we know. As I say, how that becomes wisdom. Also contemplate, where have you experienced and initiated perhaps excessive drama or over the top emotions in your life from yourself or from others? Perspective. Perspective is another great word for both Venus in Leo and Jupiter in Taurus, seeing the bigger perspective. Playfulness, I've mentioned that Venus in Leo. As I say, it's going to be going forward very soon. It'll be slow for a little while, but it will speed up. It's going to be going forward. So time to think about playfulness. What does that mean? Fun. What does that mean? I've been reading a book actually recently called The Power of Fun. It's about what is true fun. We might think fun is playing a video game, things like that, watching TV or eating some nice food, and all of those things can be fun, playing sports. But Catherine Price, who's the author of The Power of Fun, talks about true fun. And she says it's a combination. It's when connection with other people. Venus is about connection. It's about relationship. Playfulness, fantastic for Leo. A Leo needs to play, and Leo needs to really come into their inner child and let their inner child play. And flow, that creative flow. So maybe that's something to think about. Having a little bit more fun once Venus goes direct. Fun that includes connection with others, playfulness. Playfulness without feeling sort of, inhibited or self-conscious. True playfulness, you just let yourself go and go into flow. That might be something to try and aspire to. Grace and generosity, another couple of theme words that come up for this combination. Jupiter and Venus in Leo in the pursuit of leisure, pleasure, drama, attention, for example, can mean the wastefulness of resources. Certainly in Taurus, Jupiter reminds us to be realistic, live within your material means. Perhaps it's about fixing what you already have rather than aspiring to something shiny and new with this Venus-Jupiter square. That there's more to life than money and luxury. The simple pleasures could be explored, or you might feel drawn to explore during this time. Again, Taurus loves its comforts, but it is very much a down-to-earth sign. It is a sign that does want to maintain things. Maintenance is a key word for Taurus. Maintain and look after what you've got rather than always thinking about the next shiny new big thing. Now, there's a curveball for this Venus-Jupiter square. You can see it there on the chart. You've got Uranus also in Taurus. Uranus can be exciting. It adds a little bit of a soupçon of excitement. Also restlessness. Perhaps you want to sort of get on with your social life. I know certainly I'm already feeling that. I've had a bit of a social, I haven't been doing much socially recently. I've been intensely working on myself, and also working on this channel, on a book that I'm writing, on talks for conferences that I'm going to be speaking at, etc. But now suddenly my social life seems to be getting quite busy. So that's exciting. But also Uranus asks often for us to contemplate if we need space and freedom. Space and freedom and independence. Goes back to what I think I said about people pleasing earlier on, perhaps. How are we giving away our time and energy to others? Where do we need to be more independent? Where do we need? It is Venus in Leo, of course. It's about me, right? What do I want? What do I need? But being, of course, gracious about it, being honest. You know, if you have to say no to somebody, for example, and you've got a people pleasing kind of mentality and you feel bad, you feel guilty, you don't want to say no, you want to kind of go along with them. Uranus can help you with that. There's a real theme here about honesty, honesty in communication. Jupiter is about honesty and integrity and the truth, the moral truth, the higher truth. We have Mercury there, of course, making a trine, as I've already said, in Virgo. Again, that's about truth-telling and communication. Virgo is, again, very down to earth. It wants to tell it like it is. And Uranus is brutally honest. It can be brutally honest. It can show you things how they really are. So there's a real theme here about honesty, but also it has to come from integrity and from your values. It might be easier now, as I've said, because you've got that nice trine to Mercury, which is still retrograde, but it might be easier now to sort of have those conversations that you meant to have before that you couldn't quite bring yourself to, or felt a little bit scary, or you couldn't quite feel like you could tell your whole truth. Perhaps this is time now to think about it. But as I said, Uranus can be brutal. And Jupiter can get things out of proportion. So think about your mindset. This again is good, great thing about thinking about your mindset and what's real, what's reality, and what are you kind of making up is the wrong word, but what's the illusion? What illusions? What is the elusive illusion filter going through your mind as you process your thoughts, your feelings? Try and see some clarity. Uranus is great for clarity. Avoid brutal honesty. Kind and compassion honesty. Kind and compassionate honesty is the way forward, of course, always. Stay in your integrity. Integrity is not just honesty, but honesty in terms of being respectful to others, being sensitive to others, empathetic to others, sensitivity and empathy, and a genuine desire to help. We're going back to those themes that we talked about on the Pisces full moon, aren't we? Integrity is also taking responsibility and being accountable. Again, we're going back to that full moon. That was conjunct Saturn, of course, being accountable and giving credit where credit is due. Venus in Leo wants to take all the credit, you know, at its worst. Like, I did all of this myself. It was all me. Well, it's never all me, is it? It's never all with one person. Give credit where credit is due. Take the credit for yourself, of course, but give credit where it's due. As I said, this Uranus curveball, it brings changes, of course, Uranus, particularly if you have these, you know, if you're having a transit from Uranus, so sort of 21 to 25 degrees of the fixed signs, Taurus, as I said, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius. But again, if you are having anything from 10 to 17 as well, probably for actually 10 of the fixed all the way through to 25 of the fixed, because you might not be having an exact transit from Uranus, but when Uranus, for example, or any planet is making aspects to something that is making a very tight transit to your chart, it kind of pulls that energy in with it. So changes. It can bring surprises, shocks, and forced changes. So with Uranus, it's about thinking what changes need to be made, and think back to some of the themes I've just spoken about. Perhaps those are some clues for you. Can bring force change, Uranus. As I said, shocks and surprises. Some of us like surprises. Many of us don't. It depends on whether it's a nice surprise or an unwanted surprise or a shocking surprise. Uranus is about the unconventional. It's about the rebel. It's about independence, as I said, breaking free and wanting to have your own space, do your own thing. That's not such a good thing. Sorry, that's not such a bad thing for Uranus, of course, and for this as well, as long as we bear in mind that we don't want to hurt others for all the things we kind of said. Like all the outer planet transits, Uranus brings a certain intensity. It's about breakthroughs as well. What about creative breakthroughs? Think about that. Maybe this is a period for creative breakthroughs. So love or hate Uranus, it certainly shakes things up. So expect to feel a little bit restless, a little bit shaken. Movement, physical movement, Taurus, is very good for us, for our body. Move your body. I think that is one of the key ideas, for the key sort of clues for how to deal with Uranus and in Taurus. Move your body, shake yourself up. Keep the perspective. Jupiter and Uranus can really blow things out of perspective. So again, try to keep the perspective. Use that Virgo energy from Mercury there, retrograde, and Venus and the Sun in Virgo. Use that down to earth perspective energy. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater is a common phrase that you will hear when people are talking about transits to their chart from Uranus. That means don't throw the good away with the bad. There's a danger with Uranus of just like, I don't want any of this. I want my space, I want my freedom. I'm off, I'm gone. You see breakups with Uranus sometimes, romantic breakups with Uranus sometimes. There's a sort of almost like a fear of commitment, even though commitment and closeness might be one of your deepest desires, is kind of a fear. So it's kind of, Uranus kind of can urge you to kind of run away from it. So think about that. Think about that. Venus will exactly square Uranus on the 29th of September. So independence might be a theme there. Where do you perhaps need to strike out independently? That can actually have a positive effect on relationships, of course. You might need more independence. You might learn more. You might be able to come together in new wisdom, a new excitement. It's very exciting. There's a frisson. There's a frisson of sexual excitement often with Uranus. Creative breakthroughs, as I've already mentioned, with Uranus there in a square to Jupiter and Venus. So I hope this is really interesting for you. I hope it's giving you some insight and thoughts about the upcoming few days, and these themes are going to go through into September as well. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Thank you so much to everyone so far who has watched a video, who has subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I'm so grateful to all of you. I'm so happy with how this YouTube channel is going. It's still just only a month old. Really appreciate all of you. And as always, with love. Thank you.